Mike, let's talk a little bit about the 2011 session and also about our governor and his performance. You know, when he ran for governor, he said he was going to do a certain number of things when he was governor, like cut taxes, cut regulation, create jobs, and he worked very hard at that. And someone would have to say that he's been pretty successful in terms of his legislative program, but he finds himself at 29% or so, or maybe more, who knows, but still a low job approval rating. And Democrats are saying they're going to hang that around his head and all Republican candidates. How do you explain what is going on?
Inexperience, having people around him that do not know or did not know what they were doing. They were successful for a number of reasons, notwithstanding their own problems. And the other part of it is, in many parts, their communication strategy. They're talking to themselves. They're talking to talk radio people. They are talking to Facebook people who have signed up to take their feed. They're Twittering to people that want to hear what Rick Scott has to say. But there's a poll out there that, and those are primarily Tea Party people, and there's a poll that shows that 3/4 of the Floridians don't really think much of the Tea Party. So he's trying to, they're all talking to themselves instead of broadening their approach, trying to talk to the mass media, really.
But he also had, I mean, he had a good session in some ways, depending if you're on the inside or from the Republican point of view, but he also had a very visible session in attacking teachers, police, fire, you know, just rank and file blue-collar workers. And those groups, you know, have organizations that talk. There were rallies against some of these policies. So, I mean, he may have had a good session in some of the things he wanted to do and what the Tea Party wanted, but I'm not sure that session was as good in the eyes of blue-collar Floridians.
He didn't attack teachers. That is always Screven's friend's approach to dealing with the issue, the important issues of teacher tenure and education reform. What he did was come back and pass a bill that a lot of people supported, which Governor Chris vetoed during the last session, to make sure we promote good qualified teachers and we pay good teachers well, which is exactly what happens in people's businesses at home. We reward people based on merit and the work that they do. What's interesting to me about Scott is he's at least recognized there's some challenges that he's faced as a new governor. He's made some staff changes recently. He's brought in Steve McNamara, who is a veteran of the political system here in town, well respected, was chief of staff to, most recently, Senate President Mike Hiradopoulos, and prior to that, Speaker John Thrasher in the House. He knows how to navigate the system and to work with the legislature, but he did exactly what he said he was going to do. I mean, there are no surprises. He came in and he laid out an agenda, and by all objective measures, that agenda passed. So I think to some extent, he's facing not unlike what President Obama is facing, a situation where the economy is driving people's perception of what's happening. We have seen a situation in Florida where the unemployment figures have gone down from where they were when Scott became governor. We're now at about 10%. I think we had been at 12 before, 5 or 6 months ago. So there's progress, and he has some things he can point to.
I would like to come back at a future show and debate that education issue.
Me too.
But anyway, there's a reason this guy's numbers are in the tank. I mean, he has not brought any jobs to this state. He has killed jobs. He's a job killer. 1,400 teachers gone in Broward County.
How can the unemployment rate go down?
We have a train
jobs?
that we were the only shovel-ready project in the United States, and he rejected the money, acting like the money was going to go help the Treasury. The money went to Ohio and California. This guy's done. He's taken credit for companies that were already coming here. He has not created jobs. There is a reason his numbers are in the tank. There's a reason that and to go back to your other point, he talks to the Tea Party. He's on Fox Network every other week.
Oh my
It's a
gosh.
comfort zone for him.
The Tea Party are voters. Of course he talked to the Tea Party. He would talk to you, Screven. I'm sure
But
he'd
they're
be
not
happy
going
to have a
elect
conversation
anybody.
with you.
The Tea Party in this state will not elect anybody. They're a small sliver of the voters. But it's where he's comfortable. It's what Mike said. It's where he's comfortable. And it was his legislative agenda is where he was comfortable with the Tea Party. But that's why his numbers are so bad, because that's not Florida.
He has not expanded his base beyond that Tea Party and the reluctant Republicans that voted for him over Alex Sink. What I thought he did during the session that I think is going to be a challenge for him is that he poked a lot of people in the eye that were voting Republican, particularly police officers across the state who did not like having their union dues attacked. And they frankly aren't very happy about the pension thing either. And it's the governor has shown a knack for, as this past week, signing a bill that cuts property taxes for water management districts at a water management district where they're going to lay off about 2/3 of the people that work there. because
And
of
he
that bill
doesn't seem to have
signing.
any empathy for him. I
And
mean,
well,
it's
he
just
didn't get the idea that he was at the place
just-
where people were going to get
I
fired
feel like
because
I'm
of
in the
what he
middle of
did.
a very bad conversation.
Well, okay, it's interesting because at the Jefferson Jackson event, Democrats were almost gleeful in saying, you know, we're going to make him, Governor Scott, the main issue, if you will, in the 2012 election. Let me ask you this question: is that even doable? Is that a strategy that will even impact the election at all?
The main issue in this election is jobs and the economy.
Exactly.
And with respect to Governor Scott, what he has done to create jobs, and I'm sorry to use your term shovel ready, but shovel ready for the Obama administration and Democrats has meant government jobs, injection of government money into the economy. That's not going to create jobs. People in the private sector grow the economy in Florida. They grow jobs. That's why Rick Scott has cut the corporate income tax. And his first phase went through this year. Eventually, he will have cut the corporate income tax for 14,000 businesses that will use the additional money that is their money to what? Hire more people in Florida, put more people to work. So I think at the end of the day, Governor Scott's going to be judged on whether he fulfilled his promises and his focus on jobs and the economy, which he's done with a laser beam-like effort.
Republicans didn't use Obama in the 10 elections to win. So, I mean, I think you can use Rick Scott because people are going to, you know, all politics is local to some degree, and they're going to look, say, if you like this guy, you'll like Palenti, or you'll like Bachman.
I think this conversation has proven that we're in for an interesting year. I like the little controversy here, but let me ask you something else that's related, because I guess in the last, 5-6 minutes, the term Tea Party has come up at least 15 times, and I found an interesting article by Mark Caputo citing a very recent Florida poll about the Tea Party, which said, and I haven't read the poll, it was done by a group called War Room Logistics out of Gainesville. It said this, according to Mark Caputo: the sentiment against the Tea Party in Florida is significantly higher among self-described independent voters who swing elections in Florida and who looked unfavorably on the Tea Party by a 3-to-1 margin. Republican voters favored the Tea Party movement with 68% in support and less than 20% opposed. What the article is trying to say is that there now is, at least in Florida, a perceptible movement among independents away from the Tea Party. If that's true, if it's true in Florida and possibly nationally, what kind of problem does that present for Republican candidates, like the candidates for the United States Senate in Florida, or Republican candidates generally? And I'm going to throw that to you first, Sally.
I don't think it presents a problem for Republican candidates on the front end. I love that we're having a conversation about the Tea Party, because all the Tea Party is are small business owners, moms, dads who are concerned that Tallahassee and Washington are spending too much money.
It's the way it started.
And the fact,
it's not the way it is now.
it is the way it is. And the fact that we're now polling about whether or not independents are concerned about the Tea Party gives you a sense of the level of influence they've had. And I think the negatives that you're reading about in that poll are a reflection on how they have been covered by the national news media. There's been great concern that there is this force to be reckoned with at the grassroots level, at the local level, people who are going to march on Washington and say, cut our taxes, don't spend our money, that's not your money. And that's what Republicans have always believed, whether you call yourself a Tea Party member or not. That's what Republicans believe. Government is taking too much of our money. They're spending too much of our money. They're wasting our money. I don't think you'll see that message change at all among Republican voters.
Okay, we've got about a minute or so left, and we're going to come back and talk about this subject I'm about to introduce later. But reapportionment. Mike, we had two constitutional amendments, number 5 and 6, passed 2 years ago, trying to take gerrymandering out of the reapportionment process, where basically politicians carve out areas for themselves to remain in office and to have political parties remain in power. And those passed, and this year is reapportionment in the Florida legislature. Will those amendments cause gerrymandering to go away?
No, they won't. There will still be gerrymandering, and the question is whether the courts let what they do happen, and if they do a good enough job of explaining why they selected one community of interest over another. I thought the debate in the Panhandle was very interesting. Do we split the lines east and west or north and south? In other words, the north part of the Panhandle has a lot more communities of interest than the beach communities to the south of the Panhandle. But does the county have a community of interest, or is it rural versus urban or beach?
Well, why is this important, Screven? You know, this might sound like a Tallahassee insider issue, but why is the issue important at all?
Well, it's important for this reason, and we get hung up on whether it benefits the Republicans or the Democrats. But let me tell you where it is interesting. We have a Senate district that starts in Tallahassee and ends in Marion County, Senator Dean's district. We have congressional districts that start in Jacksonville, end in Orlando. You have, for example, multiple senators. The city of Ocala has 3 different senators. That's a problem. When it comes to representing a community or a city or an area, you know, they really should draw these lines where you have 1 member or 2 members that represent an area instead of 5 or 6. And we have been one of the most gerrymandered states in the country up until this point. I agree with Mike. I think 5 and 6 will have a benefit, but it needs to be about fair districts, not whether it's a Democrat or Republican district.